Hello friends, welcome to my channel or welcome back where we talk all things health and wellness. Today we are going to be making the protein pleasure cookies from Trim Healthy Mama. Yes, I know I'm a little bit late to the game, but that's okay. I am excited to share with you a variation that is budget friendly. I myself am on a budget, and so I'm excited to share with you several different options of making these cookies that are still high in protein, but still Trim Healthy Mama friendly, still budget friendly. And so stick around as I show you those tweaks along the way, and I will share with you at the end why you need to make these cookies if you haven't made them yet, and at least get some in your freezer. Let's dive right in. Now I'm using a homemade baking blend with these cookies today, and sometimes it's cheaper to make your own baking blend and sometimes it's not. It just depends on the current cost of the flours that go into the baking blend and which variation you're using. I got my recipe from my sister-in-law actually several years ago, and I'm not sure whose recipe variation it is exactly. I can put the recipe in the description box below. Now, it is not exactly the Trim Healthy Mama baking blend, but it is similar. And also there are other varieties out there, so it depends on which recipe you're using when you're making your homemade baking blend, how much of which flours go in. Again, sometimes it's cheaper to make your own, sometimes it's not, and especially if the Trim Healthy baking blend is on sale. As always, my preference is the Trim Healthy Mama baking blend, but sometimes I have my own that I make at home, and so that's what I'm using in this recipe today. And another difference with that is some of the variations call for collagen in their baking blend. Sometimes I put some in, and some of the variations don't put collagen in. Trim Healthy Mama has collagen in their baking blend. With the chocolate protein pleasure cookies, you can use cacao powder, which is a little less processed. It has more nutrients in it for you. Or if you're really on a tight budget, you can use just plain cocoa powder. That would be just a fine option that would help stretch your budget here as well. You'll notice with these recipes today that I use the Better Body Foods plant protein. This is an excellent option to substitute for protein powder in recipes that call for protein powder or collagen. And so, but also with that, just to keep in mind, I did some calculations, and roughly if you are having a smaller cookie to where you stretch the recipe to make 20 to 22 cookies, you would get 4 to 6 grams of protein per small cookie. And then if you're making a large cookie where you're making about 10 cookies per recipe, you would be getting 8 to 10 grams of protein roughly per cookie. And that also depends on if your baking blend has collagen in it or not, because that affects the protein level. And versus just in comparison, you're having about 15 grams of protein in the original recipe if you're using collagen per large cookie. And then you're having 7 to 8 grams of protein per small cookie in the original recipe if you're using collagen. As you can see, I had an ambitious little helper with me in the kitchen today. Just for fun and something a little bit more Christmassy, we decided to add the white chocolate peppermint chocolate chips to the chocolate cookies, and they turned out super yummy. I will link the original recipes to these cookies in the description box below so that you guys can make these, and just some other things that you can substitute or make more on a budget or make these cookies cheaper is it does say in the recipe the sunflower lecithin is an optional add-in, so you don't have to add that if you don't have it. And then also when it calls for some of the other flavoring extracts, it's definitely a flavor enhancer, but you don't have to add every kind of extract that it calls for. For example, most people have vanilla extract on hand, so you could add that or double it if it calls for vanilla and maple, for example. And then I like to get the Ceylon cinnamon. I get it in bulk. I get it cheaper that way in bulk online. But if you just get cinnamon from Aldi or wherever you shop, that's also a great option. It doesn't have to be an elaborate source of cinnamon. So these are amazing to have on hand when you want a sweet treat at the end of a meal or a snack in the middle of the afternoon or mid-morning. They're excellent because they're so high in protein that they're so satisfying. You don't feel like you need 10 cookies to feel satisfied. And it's also a great option to throw a few in a baggie and take with you out and about, or to have your dessert if you're going someplace. Instead of a bunch of the sugary options, you can have your own. Sometimes I'll have mine like in the car on the way home. If there's just a bunch of like regular type cookies that I can't have, I will have things like these on hand in the freezer ready to go so that I have them with life as things get busy. And it was just really fun also kind of giving them to my family to taste test, and just everyone had different preferences as far as maybe their first preference, second and third. I didn't make the chocolate chip cookies. I just made the other three, the peanut, chocolate, and Cinnadoodle. And my oldest daughter and I really enjoyed the chocolate. I think that was our number one. And my second was the peanut. And my daughter, her second was the snickerdoodle, and that was actually my husband's first preference, and his second preference was the peanut. And everyone else kind of wasn't quite as opinionated with their preferences, but that was just kind of fun seeing what everyone their taste preferences were. It was fun just throwing them all in a bowl, and then getting the next recipe, making the next recipe, and then having several of the varieties on hand depending on what you're in the mood for, or depending on who's wanting which flavor. One thing I wanted to mention also that I noticed when making these cookies with the alternate plant protein powder, that powder seems a little bit more thirsty than the collagen would be. So I found myself having to I added a little bit of almond milk as I went. Maybe start with 1 to 2 tablespoons per recipe and just keep adding a little bit as you go. You want just enough liquid so that the dough will hold together and not be crumbly. You don't want too much liquid, or that will just kind of squash them. They won't hold their form, etc. Really changes the texture. So just a little bit at a time. You might find that you would need a little bit more liquid. You could do water even. I just chose to do milk, just enough to kind of hold it together. And then you have to shape them like you want them before you bake them. And I thought it'd be fun to make the peanut ones kind of like my comfort food peanut butter cookies growing up with the potato masher there. I did find I needed to wet it in between each one. Otherwise they really stuck to my masher. Look at these cookies.